Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pro Tour Talk with Steve Dodge. I'm Steve Dodge. Today is April 4th. Oh, it's 2 days before the Jonesboro Open. It's April 4th, 8 o'clock Eastern, just like every Wednesday. And today we're going to have a very special guest. We're going to have Jeremy Koling joining us later on. He's going to be discussing the concept of playoffs in disc golf and the best way that playoffs should occur. So that's going to be a very interesting discussion. We'll also see if we can talk to him a little bit more about Lionheart and his childhood growing up, and see if he has any funny stories from the Pro Tour over the course of his pretty long and what is it called when people do well? His done well career. So a couple quick things that I want to touch on. The first thing is real quick, why I love the pro side of the game. Ever since 2006, when I served on the board for a couple years, I've been known as someone who is pro-centric. It is very important to have grassroots in the game, and it's very important to have a good, solid pro side of the game as well. The reason I love the pro side of the game is that I want the sport to grow, and I want the pro side of the game makes the game cool. It gives kids a reason to see disc golf as a real sport, and just like esports has done for video games, it makes us cool. So when the kids learn about disc golf, they have someone they can look up to. They have a Ricky Wysocki, they have a Sarah Holcomb, they have a Paige Pierce, and they can see these people are cool, and they want to be just like them, and they will stick with the sport and keep playing it. So the pro side of the game offers that cool factor. When I was a kid, I played Dungeons and Dragons. I don't do that anymore. So although if anybody wants to, I wouldn't mind. But anyway, so we're doing the same thing that esports is doing for video games, and we're doing it for disc golf, making it cool, making sure people stick with the game, and that's going to help our game grow. We'll maintain our special culture. Disc golf will always come. We've always been born from the concept of the hippies throwing in the 70s. Disc golf, you have to be a little bit different to like to play disc golf, and we are all special snowflakes. But we want to have more special snowflakes join us, and we want to spread the game to the mainstream and watch it grow. So that's my first little moment of discussion. The second thing I wanted to say is we have got some significant weather coming to Jonesboro over this weekend. The Jonesboro Open is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We start the broadcast live at 4 o'clock Eastern every day. And check out this forecast. On Friday, it literally says rather cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. Winds 15 miles an hour. High of 63. Low at night, after we're all done, low of 33. Overnight, it says breezy with periods of rain and a thunderstorm. 33-degree rain, that's very close to snow. Saturday, 48 degrees, breezy with clouds giving way to sun. That sounds like a beautiful 48-degree day. Overnight, 30 degrees. Again, precipitation on Saturday night is called snow. And then on Sunday, we wake up and it's a beautiful day relative to the other days. Oh, I forgot to tell you, gusts in the 20-mile-an-hour range on Saturday. Sunday, 55 degrees. Times of cloud and sun, and a low of 42. We are going to have some very interesting weather this weekend at the Jonesboro Open. I don't know if I've ever seen a premier event with weather this cold. I know back in, I think it was 2008 at the Vibram Open, which might have been, it would have been called the Vibram Open then. We had some 56 degrees and rain, and that was pretty miserable, and we might be able to top that this weekend here at Jonesboro. The other thing I wanted to chat about real quick, I did some quick analysis, and based on the number of courses and based on the number of PDGA players, if you presume that we've got between 200 and 400 people playing per course, or if you presume that 1 to 2% of all people playing are PDGA members, we've got somewhere, conservatively, we've got somewhere around 2 million people playing disc golf. It could be as high as 3 million, depends what numbers you throw in there, but conservatively, we've got about 2 million people playing disc golf. I often hear people saying that we need support, we need viewership from outside the sport to make us grow. Realistically, though, 2 million's a lot of people. If we can just get 10% of those people watching, I'm going to be very happy just having disc golfers watch us, and we will grow. So if you know someone that plays, tell them about the Pro Tour, tell them about the live broadcast, all the edited videos on YouTube, tell them about the amazing stats, and tell them about the celebration that we have every other weekend, where the best players in the world perform and thrill us and give us a show like you've never seen. There are plenty of us in this sport that can watch it, so please share the word. However, the reason I mentioned that 2 million number is not to say that we're really big. There's actually a hidden number in there, and that hidden number is 7%. 7% is the number of women that are in the PDGA. No, not 7% of all the women, but 7% of the people that are members of the PDGA are women. That number is very low. When we look at tennis, 40% of all people playing tennis are women. When we look at golf, 35% of all people playing golf are women. When we look at actually, I think that number's wrong. I think it's actually 25%. But then when we look at, for example, high school soccer, 40% of all people playing high school soccer are women. These numbers are a lot higher than 7. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that these numbers, we need to get our 7% up to at least 30%. There's 500,000 women who could be playing the sport right now. Instead of me saying there's 2 million people playing, there could easily be 2.5 million. It is absolutely valid to be beating this drum and saying, let's get more women playing this game. So there's a reason that people are saying we want more women's coverage, and it's because we want that number 7% to become 25% or 30% or 40%. And at that point, our game is equitable. I bet you Jeremy knows the right word. But our game becomes much more equal, and as far as the number of people playing, and diversity is always a good thing. So let's continue to beat the drum. Let's invite women to come play. Let's tell women about women's leagues, and let's try to grow the women's side of the game while also continuing to push on the men's side of the game and celebrating the amazing men that we have playing this game. So last little bit, I'm going to run through the Pro Tour news real quick. For the first time ever at the Jonesboro Open, we will actually have off-site commentary. If you go to the news section of the Pro Tour website, we talk about how this is going to be done. Corey Murrell and Sean Jack out in San Francisco will be providing commentary. Terry Miller and crew will be on site doing the cameras for the video work, and Johnny in Milwaukee will be heading up to production, running the whole thing. So we've got a pretty disparate spaced group here, and we are hopefully going to be pulling this off. If it does work, we will have better audio throughout the entire broadcast, because these guys will be in a room with good audio equipment all hooked up, ready to go. They won't have to necessarily talk quietly because they know the players won't be able to hear them. They will know exactly what's on the screen. They'll be able to talk to the stats that are on the screen, and they'll be able to look up additional stats and give us some extra information as we go. So off-site commentary, I think this is going to be a really good thing. If it works, we will revisit it, and we'll try to get it in later in the season. For now, we're planning on doing Terry Miller and his on-site commentary for San Francisco and Utah, and then we'll have to do some revisiting and figure out if there's a way to make things work towards the end of the season. So I guess the other big news that we have, for those of you who have not heard, Simon Lizotte has his back is not treating him well, and he has actually withdrawn from the Jonesboro Open. So our best wishes to Simon, to his back, and to trying to play disc golf in central Massachusetts, where it is very cold. When I left, there was about a foot of snow on the ground. So our best wishes to Simon and his back. And with that, I will introduce Jeremy Koling. Jeremy Koling, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Steve.
It's always great to see you. And what was the word that I was looking for there when I was saying that we're going to get an equal number of men and women? What is that? What is the right word for that?
I think you'd like to bring an equilibrium to the sport.
Yeah, actually, equilibrium. Like when you put a paper towel in those two cups and only one of them has water, and you wake up in the morning and it's all even.
Steve, I'm not a wordsmith. I just make it up as I go.
You are a wordsmith, from what I understand. You play, what is that game? Words with Friends Besides Steve?
Words with Friends Besides Steve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, you do very well.
I actually just got back into it. That is a game that I have spent a lot of time on. And the thing is, I get really obsessed about making the best possible word. So I always use that little green lightning arrow to see how much better my word can be. And if it's not all the way at the top, then I won't play a word until I figure out what it is. So it takes a lot of time out of my day. And so I tend to just have to put it to the side. Otherwise, I'm going to be spending way too much time on my phone.
So if I played Words with Friends, I would want to limit it like to, we each get 40 minutes for all of our plays.
Yeah, I like doing the speed play game where you have 24 hours to make a move. So, and it's a smaller board, and you get a little bit more live tiles. So you get to make some pretty fun words, and it goes pretty fast. But yeah, so that is a fun game. My parents got me enjoying word games since I could really spell. That and Boggle. You ever play Boggle? That's a great game.
That is a very good game.
I like that one too. So Boggle's better for me in some ways because you can't play against cheaters. You got 2 minutes to you make the words. You got to find the words. And I mean, I guess you could technically cheat. You could pause the screen, memorize where each letter was, and then look it up. But come on, how big of a dork do you have to be for that? Like,
I've never played the online version.
Oh yeah. There's Boggle with Friends, just like Words of Friends.
Oh, okay. I've always just done the shaky thing, and you got the 16 dice, and you write it down.
That's fun too. I like the live games. Live's the best because then you really can make sure that people aren't cheating.
Right.
But,
you're sitting next to them.
Yeah.
So I have a very good Scrabble story, and I would like to tell you my Scrabble story, and then I would like you to tell me your favorite Words with Friends story. Does that sound okay?
All right.
So my grandmother, Grandma Ann, who you know very well or knew very well, I guess I don't know, which is proper? Do you know her?
I still know about her, but I knew about her because she's no longer alive. But I still know about her.
You know of her, and you knew her. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we would go up to New England and visit Grandma over the summer. And when I got to college, I would go up there by myself sometimes. And one time when I went to visit Grandma, she woke me up at 7 in the morning, and I'm a college kid, so that was ridiculous in and of itself. And then, and the first thing she did, she said, "Hey, Steve, do you want to play Scrabble?" And I rolled over and I said, "Sure." And then she went upstairs, and I just rolled back over. Probably about, I don't know whether it was 1 minute or 10 minutes later, she comes back down and she says, "Hey, Steve, I picked our first letters. I got an A. Is it okay if I go first?" And I roll over and I say, "Yeah, whatever." She comes down 5 minutes later and she says, "I played. I Scrabbled. It's your turn." And at that point, I went upstairs and I started playing.
What was the word?
I have no idea. It was obviously some 7-letter word that she Scrabbled with, and that's the way it is. And if you don't wake up early enough, Grandma's going to Scrabble on you. And
every time, especially. My favorite story was a time where I was beating him by some insane amount. I mean, the game was over. There was 0 tiles left in the bag, but he had 7 letters left in his rack, and I was beating him by something like 175 points or something crazy. He spelled the word juxtapose over triple word, bingoed with like the J on triple letter, and then beat me by like 30 points. It was like a 200-point word. Spell the word juxtapose.
A J on triple, that's 24 points. With the X in there, which may or may not have been on any, that's 32 points.
In Words of Friends, J is worth 10, so it was worth.
Oh,
it was worth 30 over a triple word with J on triple letter.
One letter is 90 points.
one letter is worth 90 points, and then there's the to bingo, or whatever you want to call it. That's 35 in Words with Friends, I think, and then the X on there was worth 8. I mean, it was just an astronomical score. It was. I remember looking at the game. I was like, all right, finally, game's over. We can play the next game. And I look and it says you lost. I'm like, that's not possible. And I look at what happened. I was like, I was speechless. So
Juxtapose has 9 letters in it.
Yeah, but there's already 2. I mean, it was.
That is amazing.
Does it have 9? Yeah, it does have 9 letters. Yeah. I mean, he spelled juxtapose.
Yeah,
he got it.
And does juxtapose? Does that mean to like switch 2 things in their places?
Juxtapose, like juxtaposition, is like the way that things are put together in a composition. So like the logos behind your head, those are juxtaposed in a pattern, in a crisscrossing pattern.
We should probably draw attention to the logos behind my head.
So that's exactly why I did it.
And so the lights behind your head are not juxtaposed.
It's not necessary. Okay. I might not have the world's, I should know what the word juxtapose means. I used to actually get the magazine Juxtapose, or it's literally a magazine. It's an art magazine.
You just say there was a magazine called Juxtapose that you used to get?
Yeah. It's an art magazine. It's an awesome art magazine.
Okay. I've never heard of it. I used to get Dragon magazine.
Dragon magazine? I've never heard of that one.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Not me, buddy. Not me.
I've made 2 D&D references in this podcast already.
Oh, I missed the first one. Dang.
Yeah, we're not even into the playoffs concept here, but that's.
Let's get to it.
All right, let's get right to it. That was a great juxtaposition of words. So, Jeremy Koling, you have won a couple of tournaments by the skin of your teeth in extra innings, as they say. How does that feel? Does it feel like you really won, or does it feel like you just got lucky?
Oh, coming out swinging, I see. All right. It's a strange feeling, of course. Winning in a playoff, it's a lot like winning a soccer game in penalty kick shootout. You both have made it to the final, and you're tied. And, they don't always do the penalty kicks unless it's an important game. But we won a tournament when I was a kid in penalty kick shootouts. And I remember thinking, like, that's, it's pretty, nobody wants to be in that position.
Right.
However, it's, you have to have a winner. So obviously we have playoffs for those situations. And, it's something that we just all accept because that's just the way it is. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I think that, if you have to have a winner, it's better to play it out than Rochambeau, of course. You don't.
But to that point, though, Jeremy, when the soccer team goes to the shootout, usually there's already been an overtime period. Usually they have the regular time, and then they have overtime, and then if it's still tied, then they go to the penalty kick, because the penalty kick can be seen as fluky.
Yeah, I mean, it's the chances of saving a shot are highly against the goalkeeper. So, usually it comes down to somebody missing or a great save. And yeah, I mean, you're putting on the entire team's trust on the goalkeeper and the shooter, as opposed to 11-man versus 11-man format.
Right. So, maybe soccer isn't the best example, but maybe it is. Nope, you say it's not.
Maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it isn't. I don't know. It's the first one I could think of.
And it's a valid one. We've both played soccer, and we both have probably, I don't remember going to penalty kicks. You don't go often, but sometimes. Our soccer team was not very good, so we didn't get to penalty kicks often. But the place that I first went was golf. And looking at golf, we've got the PGA Championship, which does a 3-hole sudden death. You've got Masters, which does a sudden death. No, actually, Masters does a sudden death.
So that's what I mean. That's what I meant to say. Yeah,
okay, sudden death. And in fact, here's an interesting stat. With the exception of the 2013 showdown between Adam Scott and Angel Cabrera, no sudden death playoff has lasted more than 2 holes. Pretty interesting little stat there.
That is interesting.
The British Open does 4-hole aggregate playoff. You got to play all 4. And the U.S. Open obviously does the complete
18.
round the next day. Yeah. So golf hasn't figured this out yet. They don't know what the best solution is. I believe there is a best solution to everything.
Okay.
So
let's hear it.
I don't know what it is. I just know that there is one.
Okay.
So I looked up bowling, another single, basically mano a mano sport. Bowling does have, usually in a tournament, they would do a 3-frame tiebreaker. And if you're still tied after that, they will do a single ball sudden death until the number is different. So I looked up curling, but I genuinely don't understand their tiebreaker. So I could try to talk to it, but it seems like they say that you do one complete end, but it seems like somebody would have a significant advantage by going last. So I don't see how that can make sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because you want to have the hammer in curling. So yeah, that's a disadvantage.
Yeah, for sure. Well, no, having the hammer is the advantage.
That's what I'm saying. One person, one team has the advantage.
Yeah, one person has the advantage. So golf hasn't figured it out. Curling maybe gives one side a significant advantage. I don't know. If there's any curlers out there, they can put the comments and let us know. Bowling does 3 frames and then a sudden death. What do you think the best solution in disc golf is?
Well, I think that I have played in a 3-hole playoff 2 different times, and actually lost both of those 3-hole playoffs. But I think that it's an interesting format. That's for sure. I like it, and part of me wants to say that we should go with that. I also really enjoy the match play feel of the single hole sudden death playoff. But it really, to come up with the best scenario, it really depends on so many factors, Steve, because daylight can become an issue. That's certainly something that if you have a 3-hole playoff and you guys are struggling to get it in the final holes because it's getting dark and the last card's teed off later than everyone else, and they come in and you have about 20 minutes of daylight, well, you have to first make sure that the scores are correct. Then by the time they're playing, what if they have the Kenny Berry 2005 epic playoff where they go, what was it, like 12 holes?
I was going to guess 9, but either way, yeah.
That's not necessarily that's a situation where that was a sudden death playoff, but it still went that many holes. So, it's very rare. You don't see it very often. I remember last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, at the Virginia Team Invitational, a match play event, where my roommate Henry Childress had an 18-hole playoff in the playoffs of the match play semifinals with his partner. And so, 18 holes. They played a whole extra round to figure out who would win.
Pushing every hole.
Wow. So, you never know what's going to happen. But I was thinking about this earlier today, actually, and I think it's something worth trying. Without question, we should try it, and hopefully we don't have playoffs in at the end of the event. It's a situation where the winner gets all the praise, and the loser is forgotten about, and not necessarily completely forgotten about, but they did better than everyone else for all the holes. And now it's a situation where somebody gets all the glory, and it's not necessarily fair for the loser in that situation. Not fair isn't the right word, because I guess they have an equal chance in the playoff. But that being said, I'll eventually get to my point. I know I take forever, but if you were to play a 3-hole playoff minimum, and on the first hole, let's say player A gets a stroke on player B. Well, in the next 2 holes, player B's got to find a way to do something cool.
Right.
That presents a lot of interesting drama that could potentially unfold. And if that's the case, maybe they see a line that they would never try in tournament play, but all of a sudden, I guess I got to go for it now. I got to get that stroke somehow. you could see some things that you've never seen before, or you would ever think that a reasonable human being would go for, a la Simon or Eagle, or doing something crazy, and that would be really entertaining. But in terms of entertainment, you just got 3 rounds, 18 holes around, 54 holes total. I mean, that's a lot of entertainment. Like, how much more are you trying to suck out of the playoff? You know, it's interesting. I don't know what the best solution for this is.
So I'm gonna put forward my thought, and then you can knock it down as best you want. So okay. Here at Jonesboro, they have a 4-hole loop if there's playoffs, and you play that 4-hole loop. It's sudden death, but you play the 4-hole loop and you repeat it. At Maple Hill, we do a 2-hole loop and we repeat it. We just do holes 1 and 2 back and forth. At Waco, they had a 4-hole loop, and it feels to me like a playoff should be at least 2 holes. If somebody goes out of bounds on that first hole, I want them to think to themselves, okay, I'm not out of it, but I've got to do something miraculous because I know he's going to get the par or the birdie or whatever it is, and I've got to beat that. And give the fans just a little bit more excitement and a little bit more less fluke factor, if you will. So that's where my mind goes. I'd like to see at least 2 holes, and in my opinion, ideally 3, but light is a factor. So 2 to 4 holes is where I personally would like to see us go. How does that sit with you?
Like I said before, I think it'd be fun to try it. It would be something that would be, as far as I'm aware, it'd be the first time that playoff format would be used in a large disc golf event. I know that it's been used, for instance, in Asheville, North Carolina. They've gone with that playoff format in the past. But in terms of like large tournaments, it would be the first time that I'm aware that it has happened. So I would be open for that to be a playoff breaking or tie breaking scenario. However, I have to pose the question: let's say Nate had this, just using this last example at Waco, and Nate's sidearm drive was more of what he was looking for, and let's say I had thrown an aggressive drive to the pin, trying to go for the eagle. Nate lays his putt up under the basket, and I make a 60-foot putt and win in the playoff. Okay, would we be having this conversation right now? Because that would have been an exciting finish, and would have given the fans everything to talk about. They'd been raving about the excitement of the playoff. Or would we still be talking about, man, we want more still. We want more holes. You know, like these players just gave us 54 holes of their heart, but we want more. Like, let's get more.
You raise a great point. Because the reason it didn't feel as fulfilling as it could have is that very first shot decided it. In both cases, both Wacos decided that the very first overtime shot, and it was relatively it was over.
That being said, there was still some excitement because my second shot wasn't as close as I'd like for it to be. Nate had a putt from about 50 feet that was this low from going in, and James the previous year chained out. Those were both exciting runs that could have potentially pushed the playoff further, and maybe we'd be sitting in a different conversation right now. We'd be talking about ways to call foot faults on people better. But
that's an odd topic, but okay.
People love talking about foot faults.
Yes, they do. I heard you had one at Waco.
It wasn't called, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Sounds good.
No, actually, I'm glad you bring that up, because I learned something from that situation. Right. And if you aren't familiar, the situation was, as far as I have always been aware, you play your lie in line with the mandatory tree until you cross the mandatory tree, and then it becomes to the basket. If there is a mando on the hole, or whatever if it's not mandatory, but just the mandatory. Well, I was stymied against a tree, and I saw that there was mandatory in the woods, and I asked my group if I got relief in the direction of the line of play from the mandatory tree, and we all agreed that that was the ruling. However, that's only the ruling if the basket is on the opposite side of the mandatory, meaning that you have to go the opposite direction of the mandatory from where the basket is. It's a very poorly written rule, and it's difficult to understand unless you have like different things you can put on the ground and show what that means.
Right.
But I think some people, you can probably figure out what that means. But if the basket is on the correct side of the mandatory, then you still play to the basket and not the mandatory tree. So the situation was that the basket was on the correct side. However, I played it as if the mandatory was the line.
Yeah.
And so I gave myself just enough space to be able to throw a clean shot without hitting my hand on the tree. And it's, you know, with the box being in play this year, you know, it would have been pretty close to being fine for both rulings. I mean, you can screenshot it on the video of the last round and you can see what I'm talking about. But, you know, you can't see the basket, of course, because it's uphill and to the right. You just kind of have to understand where the pin is to be able to figure out. And it was a situation where when I was doing commentary the morning after, I felt like it was important to explain why my foot was where it was. And when I did that, I actually called myself out to the public, and then they were like, "No, you're actually wrong about this." And I was like, "No, I think you're wrong. I'm the pro here." And then they're like, "Well, actually 803 C A B." Okay. So I looked it up and I was like, my bad.
Well, because they know the rules doesn't mean they speak like a robot.
Exactly. Well, they kind of do. You know, when they start coming out with 3 letters, 2 numbers, and then 3 letters after that to tell me where it is in the rule books, I mean, that's pretty robotic.
One of my favorite pet peeves is when people use stupid voice to describe people who they don't want to agree with. So,
yes,
I loved your robot voice right there, and I was just like,
yeah,
the people pointing that out are not they're not the idiots.
Show me a person that doesn't do an impersonation of somebody else they disagree with giving them a dumb voice, and I will point to a soulless person, because that's what everybody does, right? Come on.
I work very hard not to do that. I'm sure at some point I do. I do, Jeremy. I'm sure I do.
Oh, I'm Steve Dodge. I don't make judgments, sir. Okay.
I don't want to make judgments.
I'm not polarizing.
So, but Jeremy, let's. I will go ahead and say at the MVP Open this year, I'm going to go ahead and, if I remember, I'm going to implement the a 2-hole playoff, and we'll see if we can manage to get a playoff. Maybe you'll be in it, and maybe you'll be able to thrill us with 2 extra holes. And I'm going to say after that it's a sudden death, but I want to have 2 holes of excitement. Giving people a little bit extra, and we'll see how it goes over, and if people think it's more valid or whatever the question is. So,
well, it's not going to happen this year. I plan on winning it outright by 3.
By 3 strokes?
Yeah.
Over Paige?
Yep.
Okay. Did she beat you last year?
Well, she won the tournament and I didn't win the tournament, so I don't know.
Was her score better than your score?
No, the girls play a different layout at Vibram also, so it would be impossible.
The girls play a different layout.
To this day, I've been tied by Valerie Jenkins at the 2008 Players Cup Championship in Red Hawk course in Ocala, Florida, or maybe that's what it is. I can't remember. And then Katrina Allen tied me at I tied Katrina Allen, I should say, at 2016 Estonia Open.
Okay.
Those are the 2 times that I've been close to being beat by a girl.
Okay. Great.
But they didn't follow through. But it will happen. It will happen someday. I guarantee that will happen. Those girls are good.
Will it happen by the end of 2020?
No.
Okay.
No. 2026 is the year.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
MVP Open will have a 2-hole playoff. We'll see if we can go to a playoff. Maybe on the last hole you'll gack 3 putts just to make it. You can see. Yeah,
I'll do that. I'll do that plenty of times, Steve. That's okay.
but I want you to tell me, Jeremy, in closing, as we're getting ready to close this thing down, can you tell me over the course of the last couple of seasons, I want you to tell me a story. You've been traveling with Austin Turner, I know, and you are one of the more entertaining people on tour. Tell me one really funny story that has happened with you and your whoever you're traveling with in between stops. I want to know something that happened in between stops that was just ridiculous and over the top and probably shouldn't have happened.
Steve, you're asking me to pick like my favorite child. This is like, so what's your favorite food?
It could be anybody.
What kind of music do you like? I mean, where do you start? Like a little heads up on this one would have been great because where do you go?
At 7 o'clock when I opened the show, I did tell everybody I was going to ask you this.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
I tuned in at 7:02, so I missed
it.
Okay. So this isn't that funny, but it's just I'm going to go ahead and this is the first thing that came to mind. Last year, Austin got into the car. We decided to tour together, and Austin's 18 years old. He was in college for one semester, so we got to show Austin how we do things. How do we cohabitate? How do we live? In a way that's respectful to not only the person you're traveling with, but also our hosts and everyone else. And so there's a lot to teach an 18-year-old kid about how to do that kind of stuff.
For sure.
That being said, one time Austin wanted to help out a little bit, so he decided to take care of the laundry. And earlier that day, I went out to Walmart, bought some Walmart Tide Pods. We didn't eat any of them, so we're good. So we had actually Marty McFly in our hotel room with us. And Austin had agreed to go do the laundry. So he takes all of our laundry, takes the quarters, puts them in the machine, and comes back upstairs. Marty McFly lies down on his air mattress, and he leans back and he's like, "What the heck is this?" And it's the Tide Pod. And Austin says, "Oh shoot." And he grabs it and runs back down the steps. And I'm like, "What the heck, dude? Did you forget to put the detergent in?" He's like, yeah. And so I'm like, all right, well, you got it early, so we're good. He comes back up 2 minutes later. He said, "I need 5 quarters. And I'm like, "What do you need 5 quarters for already?" He said, "I accidentally put all the clothes in the dryer first." It's not done yet, Steve. We're not done yet. He's telling him, so I'm like, well, thank God you didn't put the detergent in first. That would have been really bad. So then he tells me, well, I don't know, man. It's like, you know how all washers are on the left and all dryers are on the right. And I'm like, no, I don't know that. That's not a universal rule. Like, what do you he's like, well, that's how it is back at our house. And I'm like, well, that might be the way it is at your house, but that's not the way it is everywhere. So he's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So we're laughing about this story. He puts the laundry in the right place, and actually I go down with him this time to make sure we all get it squared away. So I'm laughing about this story because I'm just like, golly, Austin, like there's a story like this every week. So we're telling his mom on the phone about what happened, and he's explaining, like it's just like at home where the washer's on the left and the dryer's on the right. And his mom's like, honey, no, our washer's on the right and our dryer's on the left. So the only ground he had to stand on was completely eliminated right there. So
you can always count on mom.
Yep. She set him straight. So yeah, there's stuff like that happens all the time. But he's learned his way through the last year. I feel like he's done a pretty good job adapting to how to cohabitate.
I'm glad he's had you to teach him, Jeremy.
I think he's probably pretty glad that he's had me too. There's times when I've been happy to be that person too, but that's a full-time job being a dad.
Nothing like making you feel super proud when he goes down the next time and puts it in the washing machine.
That's right. You give him a pat on the back. You say, "You did laundry great this time, buddy."
Here we go. Clean clothes.
That's right.
Jared, I look forward to seeing you out at Jonesboro. You'll be on the live broadcast Saturday and Sunday, I presume.
Yeah. Will I be?
It's up to you.
It's up to me, huh? All right. Well, then, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be there.
Okay. We look forward to seeing you on the live broadcast Saturday, Sunday, 4 o'clock Eastern. Thank you very much for taking time with me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you the next time I see you.
Yeah, man. I'll see you in a coat tomorrow, buddy.
Thank you. That's the truth. Thank you, Jeremy. Bye.
We'll see it.
So, everybody, that was Jeremy Koling signing off. Jeremy will be competing at the Jonesboro Open from 4 o'clock till whenever on Saturday and Sunday. And we've got a action-packed card for you on Friday at 4 o'clock as well. Let's see if we can figure out who those people are on Friday. Just real quick. The 4 people competing on Friday, we've got Nate Sexton, Seppo Payu, Ricky Wysocki, and local favorite, or I should say Arkansas favorite, Kevin Jones. He's apparently from the other side of Arkansas. And what do you got here?
Your screen's not showing.
My screen's not showing?
Yeah.
Oh, I should do this. There we go. Hey, everybody. So thank you very much, Seth. Now my screen's showing. So those are the 4 people that will be Friday at 4 o'clock. That's in 2 days. Set your calendar, set your schedules. And as we do on the podcast now, if you have any questions for me that you want me to answer in the after show, which is going to be right after this in the podcast, go ahead and just enter them in the chat. And when I get home, we'll edit this down, and then we'll review all those questions, and we'll add the answers to those questions right at the back end of the podcast. So thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a great night. Throw them straight.